One, two.
My friends in Florida that live in condos. Hi, Fred.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. Just make sure the mic's working. Anybody want to test theirs real quick?
Test, test. Good. Yep. I
Test.
think we're working.
Wonderful. Thank you.
We're live.
Hello and welcome to the Monday, May 15th, 2023 meeting of the Wayzata Planning Commission. I hereby call the meeting to order. My name is Larissa Stockton. I'm the chair of the Planning Commission, and I have a few words about how to participate in this evening's meeting. There's a Zoom meeting information which has meeting ID 881-7178-5925. Passcode is 481476. Members of the public may attend this meeting, this Planning Commission meeting, in person or watch and listen remotely by viewing the meeting on Channel 8 WCTV and on the city's website at wayzata.org/WCTV. Public comment during the public forum and/or public hearing portions of the meeting may be provided in person at the meeting in advance or by logging into the Zoom call and raising your hand during the public hearing. When your name is called in the meeting, you'll be seen and heard in our council chambers and the cable channel. You'll be asked to unmute, and then you may begin your comment. All public comments must include your full name and address. The city encourages comments or questions about items on the agenda, and when possible, requests you submit them in advance by emailing publiccomments@wayzata.org, calling city staff at 952-404-5323, or mailing the Wayzata City Hall at 600 Rice Street East, Wayzata, Minnesota, 55391. Attention, public comment. Next, we have roll call. Director Gellner, would you please call the roll?
Yes, Commissioner Schwalbe.
Here.
Commissioner Sorensen.
Here.
Commissioner Douglas.
Here.
Chair Stockton.
Here.
Commissioner Merriam.
Here.
Commissioner Severson.
Here.
And Commissioner Elg.
Here.
Okay. Next, we have the approval of the meeting's agenda. Does anyone have any questions, proposed changes to the agenda for this evening? And if not, may I have a motion to approve as presented?
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Severson. May I have a second?
Second, Douglas.
Thank you, Commissioner Douglas. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The motion passes and the agenda is approved. Okay, next we have the approval of the consent agenda. This evening's consent agenda consists of two items. A, we have the approval of meeting minutes from May 1, 2023, and B, approval of the Planning Commission report and recommendation of denial for development application at 200 Lake Street East. Does anybody, any commissioner, have any questions, comments on this consent agenda or wish to pull an item for discussion?
Chair, I would like to pull item 4B for further discussion. The Planning Commission report and recommendation of denial for development application at 200 Lake Street East.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Do we discuss that now, or is that brought up later?
Yeah, Chair, you pull that from the consent agenda. If there's no other changes, you could ask for a vote on the consent agenda as amended, which would just be 4A.
Okay, then can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended?
So moved, Douglas.
Thank you, Douglas. May I have a second?
Second, Schwalbe.
Thank you, Commissioner Schwalbe. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Do I have to, nay? Okay, the ayes have it, and the motion passes, and the consent agenda is approved.
And Madam Chair, so now, as you know, we don't have any public hearing items this evening, but you could take up the item that was pulled from the consent agenda. And staff just had one note about that, right, Director Gelman?
Yes, Chair. And before we discuss any comments from Commissioner Merriam, I just wanted to suggest just a friendly amendment to the title of the report, just to more accurately reflect the content of the report. And so this would be page 26 of the packet, which is the first page of the report. The title says report and recommendation of denial, and then lists all the requests, but really more accurately, this is a recommendation of denial for those first two requests of rezoning and CUP for joint parking, and then a recommendation of approval for the remaining. So we'd really be adding the word "and approval," just the word approval here.
Okay, did any commissioners have any thoughts or comments about that change to the title or the proposal?
So you want to, I'm sorry, you want to change it to specifically what? Because we are denying the application, and, you know, the other, every piece kind of depends on whether or not the zoning change takes place.
Yeah, I can answer that, Chair and Commissioner, I think that's true. There's some nuances to this particular report, and I think we tried to make it clear in the report that the recommendation of approvals for requests 3 through 6 would be contingent upon the first two. Our suggestion about retitling it is really just to more accurately reflect the summary of recommendation. So this is a report out from the Planning Commission that's making a number of recommendations. In accordance with your direction at the last meeting and in reviewing the minutes, staff felt that there was clear consensus and direction to recommend denial of the first two requests, the zoning and the CUP for joint facilities parking, but there wasn't any issues with the other requests in the application as they stood. But that's certainly something the Planning Commission could discuss. That's just the rationale for the way the report is drafted.
Can I ask a question on that?
Yeah.
So if they came back, would we have to reapprove 3 through 6? Or do we assume that 3 through 6 is going to be the exact same? So since or if city council then goes on and, follows our direction, would we be assuming that those 4 items would stay the same? And then we would be hearing about maybe 1 and 2 only? So maybe can you?
Chair and Commissioner, no, if this is a whole application, it will go on with your report and recommendation to council. Council will make a decision on all of these things, but in the case of council, if they do not approve the zoning amendment or the joint facilities parking, everything would be denied. And so if the applicant came back with something, it would be a whole new application. You would take a fresh look at it. Obviously, certain things would be changed, and you'd make a new recommendation based on that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, for discussion, I think I was back and forth on it myself, but if it's tied to the application that we have, I think it adds some clarity to the ultimate recommendation we're making to council. It kind of underlines what we're saying and with regards to this specific application. So from that perspective, I think I'd be in favor of making the change, but Commissioner Douglas, I think you had something to add?
Well, it does delineate. I remember this came up once before on the Boatworks project. They approved some things, and I was wondering, is this how we handle that time? Do you recall?
Well, Chair and Commissioner, so with the Boatworks, that was an application that was denied. I think the reason staff thinks this approach makes sense is because it's probably the most helpful to council to get the commission's input, findings, and recommendation on each of the 6. Even though they are codependent, council could decide, for example, that the requests for 1 and 2 have been met, and then they'll know how the commission felt about 3 through 6. So that's, I think, a compelling reason to take this approach, but also make clear to council in your report, which I think you do right there in the summary, and later on too, that without a rezoning, which is the first request, without that CUP for joint facilities parking, the others are in one sense moot. I mean, you can't get something for a zoning district designation that doesn't exist, or if it's still PUD. So again, that's the rationale, but it's certainly up to the Planning Commission on how best to make a recommendation for council in this report.
Commissioner Douglas has a follow-up.
I'm comfortable with your explanation. One question, if the council went ahead and approved the zoning ordinance amendment, would then number 2 automatically be approved? Because doesn't that require the parking?
So if the council decided to move forward with approval of number 1, that wouldn't give any kind of automatic approval of number 2. They're really separate requests ultimately, and number 2 is very specifically tied to the project, the exact development application that you reviewed.
Okay, thank you.
Well, there were some of the findings that I also had a little bit of a difficult time with, and on page 11 of the report or page 36 of the packet, it talks about advancing some of the comprehensive plan's goals, including walkable and pedestrian-friendly environment. And I would disagree with that statement, because from a pedestrian point of view, it's much more appealing to walk by the property as it is today than it would be with 6 buildings there, blocking the views beyond, and also creating sort of a canyon effect. And that was something that I brought up at the meeting as well, but I don't think it would be, I don't consider that being pedestrian friendly. I mean, yeah, you can walk there, but it wouldn't be as pleasant of an experience. And then the other thing I kind of wondered about was the health, safety, and welfare of having residential units, particularly, well, the further west you go, the closer to the railroad tracks you get. And there was an issue brought up about safety with the railroad tracks, with the proximity of the railroad tracks. So I feel like that maybe should have been included in the report as well. And the other thing I wanted to talk about was the density. Because we're asking for 20 to 30 units per acre in that area with that zoning. And I have a hard time seeing how that would be achieved with a 2-story building. And it's something that we've talked about in the past, that we don't really want that kind of density in that area. So how do we solve that issue?
I want to just interject and ask some clarity from staff. In revising, in looking back for corrections to our documents, I don't know that we're reopening issues for discussion at depth, but making edits to the existing sort of script and dialogue and decisions we made.
Right, so tonight, the goal of the discussion is to ensure that the minutes and this planning commission report and recommendation are working together simultaneously, and that we accurately captured the findings that you made and the recommendation that you made. So if you'll recall from the meeting, we walked through all the numbered lists of each
Yes.
request, remember? And you called out which numbers you felt on that list were part of your recommendation.
Right.
So we stayed very close to that in the way that we worded the findings here in this
Right.
report. So tonight, we don't want to necessarily get into an evaluation of the discussion that was had last time,
Yeah.
but we do want to ensure that the findings that
All right.
were made by a majority of commissioners at the time.
Yes.
And so if it was an individual comment or even just a couple commissioners making that comment, we have that in the minutes, but it wasn't necessarily part of the majority's recommendation. So that's the distinction between
Okay.
those things.
Yeah, that makes sense. So if there's something in the minutes that doesn't seem accurate to you, or, then that's what we would be looking at.
Well, I was just wondering if we could add those couple of findings to the report. And, my density question, I guess, should not be coming up.
I don't think we want to be
at this time.
opening anything.
So-
We deliberated long and hard on that, and we had an opportunity to put in all of our thoughts, and I think the conclusions are there, and they're well stated. But I would like to ask if we need to make a motion to just change the title before we, change the reading of the actual motion before we further look at any typos or clerical errors in the minutes.
Yes, Chair, I would say that the motion you could ask for, if you're done with discussion among the commissioners, would be to approve the draft PC report and recommendation with the amendment to the title that was noted by Director Geldner.
But we can still look at minutes separately, that's meeting minutes and a separate item, or
I
did we
believe the
close
meeting
that?
minutes were approved as part of the
Yes, that's
consent
right, they
agenda.
were,
So,
yeah.
yeah, you could reference that. And I guess to elaborate on the point that Director Geldner made, and I agree with everything she said, but to address Commissioner Miriam's concerns, I think, about some of the points that she raised, I'm confident they're in the minutes, and if you feel like anything was left out, when you take a motion and vote on this, any commissioner during that discussion can voice, I'm going to vote for this or against this because I agree or don't disagree. So, there was a unanimous direction last week, but you're taking a new vote on that now, and you can add notes for the record, essentially as your own view. I don't encourage a lot of that because I think you spent a lot of time,
Yeah.
but just so you know what you can do procedurally, that's what I would like to point out.
Okay, so since we're not going through minutes because we already approved them, and since we are just looking at the title of the motion wording of the application for clarity with regards to the 6 subsections, then I'm going to ask if we are in unison, someone would like to pass a motion to make the amendment to that motion's reading and state it for the record.
Well, can I just ask a question?
Yes.
Do we want to add to the findings or not? You sound like you're shying away from that.
I don't have anything to add to the findings, but as we would vote, I think we would make that comment. Is that correct? Is that what I not just heard?
Yes, Chair. I think there's a couple approaches you could take here. I mean, if a majority of commissioners feel that the report does not have a finding that was discussed and staff was directed to include in the report at the last meeting, you could discuss that, and if there's agreement on that, we could amend the report accordingly. If it's, as Director Gellner pointed out, if it's just a minority view, meaning all the commissioners didn't agree with that or didn't vote on that, then we would encourage leaving that out, and you could express your view on what kind of findings should be made or what kind of direction should be given during the discussion period of the vote on the report. So, Chair, again, I think the motion you would ask for at the conclusion of discussion about this agenda item would be, can I have a motion to approve the draft planning report and recommendation with the amendment to the title that Director Gellner noted earlier?
Okay. First, I think we have more discussion points or questions.
Yeah, could you just tell us exact wordage you're suggesting that we add to the title here?
Yes, Chair and Commissioners. So right now, the title of the report, and we're not, this is not a substantive change, by the way, this is just changing the title.
You're right.
We think to more accurately reflect what the recommendation is. So it would be report and recommendation of denial of rezoning and CUP for joint parking and approval of first floor multiple family dwelling CUP, shoreland PUD CUP and SIP CUP, and project design at 200 Lake Street East.
Okay, well,
Just call, and the idea there again, Commissioners, just calling out that this is a nuanced report with the first two are denial recommendations and the others are approval, with a note that those approvals don't work without approval of the first two.
okay. Well, I'm in favor of making the amendment to the title. Is anybody, if we're generally in favor of making the amendment to the title, then we can go ahead and make a motion on that. Would anybody here like to do so?
Sure.
Commissioner Sorensen?
Yeah, I would make a motion that we modify the title as suggested by staff.
Do we have a second?
Second, Douglas.
Thank you, Commissioner Sorensen and Douglas. All those, I'm going to do it, all those in favor on,
And Chair, usually you'd
Oh,
ask for
discussion,
further
yeah.
discussion. Yeah, and I would just clarify that motion is just to change the
Just to
title,
change
not
the title.
necessarily to adopt it. Okay, so
Yeah.
that's what's on the table.
yes,
So,
we're
yeah.
just changing the title right now. So any further discussion on changing the title? Okay, then I'm going to do and all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the motion passes. And the draft recommendation on the draft report and recommendation will be in the consent agenda at our next meeting. And after adoption, we'll go to City Council for their consideration.
Well, actually, Chair,
Now,
I'm sorry.
I can't do that because
Sorry,
it's.
yeah,
that's for
sorry to
whole
muddy the
thing.
waters here.
Yeah.
I think that motion was just to change the title. I think we need a motion and
To separately.
action to adopt the report, right?
Separately, okay.
I make a
Now that
motion.
we've changed the title, and we have a new title, did I hear
Yes.
something down on the left?
Well, I make a motion that we approve the Planning Commission report and recommendation of denial for development application at 200 Lake Street East.
Does he have to read it in the way we reworded it, or the way it is?
The title's
We've
been
already
changed. No, I think
retitled
that
it.
motion's fine. That's
Okay.
that's the agenda item. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Severson. Great. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Are we supposed to have further discussion on that, too? Did I mess up?
Yeah, Chair,
Sorry, it got
Yeah.
confusing in an unexpected way.
yeah. I think we had some ayes there. Let's back up.
Okay.
Why don't you just ask for further discussion? We have a first and we have a second.
Yeah.
Just ask for further discussion. I think maybe Commissioner Merriam may want to say something,
Yes.
or others may as well. So-
Yes, okay, so we backed up, and now we're at further discussion for that same thing. Thank you. Commissioner Marion?
Well, at this time, could I make a friendly amendment? Or can I make an amendment to the report?
Chair and Commissioner, you could do that procedurally if the person who made the motion and seconded consent, yeah.
Could we also include in the report a concern about health, safety, and welfare, considering the proximity of the residential units to the railroad track as part of our findings, and that a series of 6 buildings, and maybe we should look at these separately, all along that stretch would also inhibit the pedestrian experience because it would create a canyon effect.
I would not be in favor of that amendment.
Okay.
We've already discussed denying the application, so the builder at this point is not allowed to build 6 buildings and is likely going to come back with a different plan. And I personally am in favor of the density, and whether it's 5 buildings or whatever, I'm not in agreement with that concern, just personally.
And what about the first one? Health, safety?
We have homes close to the railroad tracks everywhere in the city, and that's something for the builder and the railroad company to be cognizant of and make sure that there are plans in place to make it as safe as possible.
Yeah, I'd like to add that I thought that, we need to, or I feel that the train safety is kind of out of our purview. And, I mean, it's obviously not out of our concern, but it's out of our sort of purview, if you will. And I do think that the minutes did a good job of reflecting some of the points that you brought up. And I asked a clarifying question on, you said to reduce the cores, and I asked what that meant. So I think that's clear in the minutes. And there was one other item that you mentioned. There was 3, sorry, it was the train.
Well, just those 2. I just had questions about the density, but that's irrelevant. So it was just the 2.
And open space, I think we did talk about open space.
In regard to,
Yeah.
yeah,
The
the number.
I just want to reiterate that safety is 100% our concern, but just with regards to contacting the railroad and querying that, I don't know if that's where we sit. But I think we did ask that question as well.
We did.
We did, yeah, I think we did cover it.
And-
And that's the danger of going too deep here, because we covered a lot on 3 hours, and we felt very confident then, and I think we feel very confident now.
And I think they're adequate items to bring up again when they come back, but at this point, I don't think we should mess with what we've already.
Right, I just
Capture.
felt like it wasn't in the findings, and they were things that we had discussed, but,
I felt that they're well documented in the minutes, though, and we had a discussion about the views, and we all said that we don't have views now because of the homes there, the banks. You can't see the lake now from, it
Right.
didn't have that much of an impact
agree.
from what it is now. I think it's all well, we had so much in the minutes. I feel very comfortable with what we have going forward.
but I just want to clarify that that was a different issue. We don't have the view of the lake, but we do have the open space. That's all I'm getting at. So, but, I mean, it sounds like I'm getting some pushback. I just felt like it would be relevant to add to the findings, but if we don't want to add it, I'm fine with that. It's documented and we can move on.
The council will see our minutes, right?
Yes,
That's
they
part
will.
of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Okay, so this is good dialogue, but there's not going to be that addition to the motion that's now on the table. So, unless there's further discussion, we should go ahead and maybe do
Call the question. You can do a voice vote or ask for roll call vote.
let's do a roll call vote.
Okay, I'll start the roll call with Commissioner Schwalbe,
I vote yes.
Commissioner Sorensen,
Yes.
Commissioner Douglas,
Yes,
Chair Stockton,
Yes.
Commissioner Merriam,
Aye.
Commissioner Severson,
Aye.
Commissioner Elk.
Aye.
Okay, the ayes have it. Motion passes. And now, the draft report and recommendation will be on the consent agenda at our next meeting and after adoption.
Yeah,
No.
I'm sorry, Chair, it will actually go on to council now.
Oh, wait, it would not come to us at all. It just goes on to council
Right,
for
you just adopted
their
your
vote.
final report to council, and they'll.
Okay, yay,
Yep.
thank you. Okay, well, then I guess we move on to other items, hopefully.
Yes, and
Good, I
I'll
got that
note
right.
that the intent here is that the council will review the item, the 200 Lake Street item, at their June 6th council meeting.
Okay.
And then for other reports and development updates, I was close to having some public hearings ready for the June 5th meeting, but I didn't quite have them ready. So I actually don't have any content for June 5th meeting, so I'm going to cancel it. I thought I might have some applications, but they're just not quite ready. So that means that we will have a busy night on June 19th. I will have multiple hearings for you that night, but it's only one meeting in the month, so I guess we'll have that trade-off this year. I think we'll have one absence, that Chair will be absent for June 19th, so Vice Chair Sorensen will lead that meeting. I do anticipate we will have 1030 Lake Street on that agenda too, for a two-lot split.
Which one?
A past application you looked at was 1030 Lake Street, so I have a
Oh.
new development application for
The
that.
one that we
that's
had, that
coming
there
in.
were three.
Yes, that was a three-lot split, and so they'll be proposing a two-lot split. So you'll see that on your June 19th agenda, along with a few other applications just from around town. And then, of course, we don't have a meeting on July 3rd, and then we'll have our other second July meeting. And then August should be back to normal. I would anticipate we would have both meetings that month. And that's all I have for you, Chair.
Great, well, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for participating. This concludes all agendas and agendas. Can I get a motion to adjourn from one of the commissioners?
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Alec. May I have a second?
Second, Severson.
Thank you, Commissioner Severson. Further discussion? I have to remember that. All those in favor, may I have an aye?
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the motion passes, and the Monday, May 15th, 2023 Wayzata Planning Commission meeting is adjourned.